Hello everyone, and welcome back to We Love PMO, where we simplify the complex world of project program and PMO management. And I am your host, Sarah. And if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. Don't forget to hit that follow button so you don't miss any notifications for when we have a new episode released. And in today's episode, I have a special guest, Wei, who's going to be talking about a really good book that he is the author of. So I'm really excited to have you on today, Wei. So would you like to just give you an introduction to our listeners about yourself and a little bit about your book, Project Management for Noobs, simple enough for the first project, complex enough to be stepping stones to the PMP certification?
Hey, hi guys, my name is Wei. The full name is Wei Kwan Ng. So my last name only has two letters, N and G. So it's pronounced Ng. Because but in if you write it in Chinese, it is actually Huang. So similar to the CEO of NVIDIA, David Huang, but it's because it's in a Chinese dialect. So that's why it's just pronounced as Ng. So that's an interesting bite of the name. So I am a project manager, have been doing it for the last 20 years or so. So currently I am working at Agile Technologies, working on something called a mass spectrometer, where I lead the new product introductions for the mass spectrometers. That's my day job. I do have some extracurricular activities in which I actually do project transfer in setting up factories in the US as well as China. And I've been doing this transferring, setting up plants in China for, I would say, at least 15 years from the days when I worked at HP, Hewlett Packard, and then right now in Agile Technologies. So, and I've written a book called Simple Project Management for Noobs to Pros, which is actually a written form of the class that I conduct at Agile Technologies. So one of the things that we have been doing is that the mass spectrometer is probably one of the most complex instruments up there. It consists of 1,500 parts, something similar to what you would think, something similar to a car. Only difference is that it sits on your desk and it has very high precision. And because of that, there will always be new things happening. For example, continuous improvement on how to make the product cheaper, better, faster. So there will always be projects coming along. And one of the targets that my boss has for me is it possible to get new engineers to come in and start working on projects? Or rather than giving them 5 years runway and then they start a project. So that is the reason why I'm actually conducting this class in my company at least twice a year. And because of this, um, the idea came up, well, what if I'm not able to conduct the class anymore? Or is there a better way for me to actually convey my thoughts rather than waiting, 6 months, 3 months to attend the class to gain the knowledge? So I think, and that's where the book comes in. So there you have it.
Sounds like it would be a really, really helpful book. And
Mm.
is I know when I've spoke with other sort of subject matter experts in different industries, so like with engineers, are they quite difficult to recruit? Is there like a small pool of people with that expertise to sort of come in and do that type of work?
Not really. So one of the things that if you're talking specifically about project managers, we usually get engineers. As long as you have a degree, you should be able to do the job. And here's the interesting thing: whatever that you learn in college or university, it's extremely basic. So once you enter the job, and then you realize that there is so much more stuff. So it's good that you attend university. It's good that you have a degree but that is just the minimal requirement. Once you get into the job and then you start realizing, wow, there is so much more to engineering. There's so much more to just cutting a piece of metal than just cutting a piece of metal. There's so much more. And that's where all the other things come in. And project management is the same thing. You actually have to get your feet wet, go in there and you realize, oh, it's not exactly what I think it is. There's so much more. And the more you learn about it, then well, the more fun it gets if you're in that sort of kind of thing.
Really, I agree with you there. It's the lived experience that's
Hmm.
more important.
Hmm.
And so I sort of find as well with a lot of people who've gone through the traditional training for project management and they're armed with all the frameworks, all the buzzwords and stuff like
Hmm.
that. But it's the soft skills that
Correct.
they're lacking in regards to actually how do they negotiate? How do they lead? How do they, link in with very difficult stakeholders who maybe be putting barriers up and stuff like that. So it's very important that, yeah, they get that sort of experience sort of first and just kind of, learn. They learn so much within that sort of first year, that first
Mhm.
project. Um, but yeah, in today's session, we're going to be talking a bit about some of those common sort of misconceptions about project managers and also tips for, which we sort of touched upon as well, about transitioning from a beginner into like that certified professional, but also a bit about some modern trends, how Agile is becoming more popular to sort of use in that sort of hybrid sort of theory. But what I
Mhm.
really would like to ask you first, Wei, is what inspired you to write your book?
Okay, so the idea of writing a book is it came from a conversation with a college student. He attended National University of Singapore. So, and I asked him, what's he doing? He said he's working on his final year project. And so I asked him casually, so what do you think? Uh, is project is the project going on okay? Is everything doing well? Do you like the topic? And to my surprise, he said project management is dull and project management is difficult. And I was like, huh, I wasn't expecting that answer. So mind you, this is no dumb kid. He actually completed his he's on his final year project. He's on a full scholarship from the Singapore Armed Forces, and he is going to be a commissioned officer with the rank of captain.
Oh,
So
okay.
he has people reporting to him. He has people under him. He's an officer with the Air Force. So it's not just any random dumb kid who doesn't know what they're talking about. So I probed further. What do you mean by dull? So one of the things he mentioned that project management is intimidating. One of the things that he actually has to do is to go for classes. And if you look at most project management textbooks, they're like 500 pages long.
Mm.
So how are you going to read a 500? It's just like asking a person who is a non-computer science major
Yeah.
to say, I want to learn Python. And the professor gives him, oh, you read this book. And by the time you finish chapter two, you're falling asleep. How are you going to learn computer languages? Even though that's one of the things that you probably need to do. You probably need to know coding if you want to be, if you want to survive in the industry. But so same thing with project management. Uh, is it dull? Not really, if you actually think about it. But because of the high starting point that he has to learn, project management. So then it becomes dull for him. Then the next question is, why is it difficult? And if you think about it, the reason why most project managers actually have a job is because projects fail. We kind of, and if you look at the statistics, overall statistics, whether it is done by PMI, whether it's done by McKinsey, whether it's done by Boston Consulting Group, one thing that stands out is that 60% of 70% projects fail.
Yeah.
So when you do a project, it is up to the project manager who will need to put in the amount of effort, whether it's communicating, whether it's grouping, getting the people to come along with a single project goal. He has to put in the right amount of effort. So when he said that it's difficult because nothing seems to be going, so then of course you have to explore further. What are the things that needs to be done in order for the project to start off correctly, in order to make it achieve success in the long run.
Definitely. It's that building of the foundation, isn't it?
Mhm.
And
Yes.
also having the buy-in from the start. And if your planning and your
Yes.
scoping hasn't been done, correctly,
Yes.
it's on the trajectory to fail.
Yes.
And yeah, and particularly if you're working for a business or an organization where, especially if the top cover, perhaps like the executives, the senior leadership team, don't fully understand the importance
Hmm.
of the mechanics and the
Yes.
ecosystem of projects, it's it's very difficult then to have a clear kind of audit trail of where that mandate's come from. And actually, quite often, particularly organizations and businesses who have a lower maturity in regards to having a sort of PMO or project management frameworks in place, they forget about the budget in regards to actually once we've created this product and we pass it over into business as usual, have we actually got the money to back this up in regards to the resource that we need and the maintenance
Yes.
for it? And we forget about that sometimes. So
Yes.
even once the project might be a success, but then the product fails because nobody
Correct.
had the thinking to think about the full lifespan. Um,
Hmm.
and I've come across, I've coached a number of sort of project managers who've kind of they're a subject matter expert in their organization. You know, perhaps they're like an engineer, HR, but then they need to wear the hat of project manager, and they find it really difficult. And they've been just given a manual, like here you go, and they just completely lost. And I find with them, it's kind of scenario based sort of training,
Hmm.
you know, practical, you know, going through scenarios and actually, if there's software that's being used or templates, let's actually work on them together. So you're actually getting the practicalities down instead of just
Yes.
reading boring bureaucratic because no, you know, like Prince 2, nobody takes Prince 2 and do that and follows that whole system through. It's like
Hmm.
picking parts that are so I understand it why people who are new to it and they're like, this is so really like hard and difficult if they've not had someone who is passionate and fully understands it and who's been in it for a long time to introduce
Hmm.
them to it. So I think this book of yours is going to be really helpful to many people. Um,
Yeah.
and many people I've come in contact with, and I'm sure you have within your career, find project management intimidating because there's
Hmm.
so many big sort of misconceptions. And sort of in my sort of 15 plus years, I've seen many people who have been hesitant to step into this field because they think it's overly complex or they require a special kind of personality. But to me, the truth is like project management is just, it's a structured way of solving problems. And it's something we
Absolutely right.
all do in different ways. And you might not call it a project, but you know, if you're at home and you're turning your garage into a room or you're you know,
Hmm.
everybody's done a lifestyle project at some point.
Absolutely right.
So yeah. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions you've encountered when you've come into contact with other project managers?
I think it goes back to the question, the first question, why am I writing the book? The biggest misconception is that all projects will be successful. And and everybody goes in and says, "Oh, I'm gonna do this. It's gonna make a huge load of money, and I'm gonna be good. I'm gonna be rich." No, it doesn't happen that way, Or you actually start transferring a project, or you start to do a cost reduction, and they start looking at, "Oh, I'm gonna do a cost reduction project," and then in the end, somewhere in the middle, they start to uh, I think they get into a wall and they start having problems because number one, people don't listen to them. In fact, that is the one of the very, very experienced managers. He's a functional manager, but he's been tasked to do a to do a project. And one of the biggest hurdles that he told me is that people don't listen to him. And I was like, why? He said when he was a functional manager, people listen to him because they have to. They report to him. But once you go into project manager where people don't actually report to you, then it takes up a serious, you need serious powers of persuasion to get people to do the work because they don't report to you. So they can actually say, no, I don't want to do this. So, so one of the things I actually told him is that, well, there are certain things that you actually have to do in order to get things done. And one of the things that is very, very unfortunate is you do it first and then apologize later. So, so um, Interestingly enough, he actually listened to that. He said, okay, I will do this because I think it's right, even though I do not get a sufficient backup. And the thing is, it actually worked. So he bulldozed, he bulldozed his way through. And when people find out that his method actually works, then they became convinced. And after a few times doing it, then they're fully supportive of what he's doing. So I think that is, to me, the people portion is probably one of the biggest. But if you know what you're doing, I think it's perfectly fine to go ahead and do. And then once the thing is successful, then people will start following, and then they will provide you even more support than you would get uh, if you didn't do it in the first place.
Definitely. You can have the best project plan in the world, but if you can't align the team, the stakeholders, it's all going to fall apart. And one of the things you said there, which I think is a really key sort of soft skill, is like needing to have that persuasion and
Mm,
negotiating sort of skills and trying to understand from those stakeholders, okay, if they're really not buying into it, what is it that's holding them back? But also what's in it for them? What can we sort of sell to them? Like, if we do this, this is how it's going to better you, or it's going to better
mm,
them, but this is how it impacts you as well.
mhm.
Um, so yeah, stakeholders can, yeah, you really need their buy-in,
Yeah,
definitely. Communication. If anyone ever asks me what's the one key skill, it's communication, making sure that you're
absolutely. Mhm.
communicating across. Your book, it's designed for both beginners and also people that are working towards their certification. So how did you balance that sort of accessibility with the depth of information that you have in there?
Okay. So one thing that I find that's really helpful is, of course, the PMI framework, the IPEMCC. So that's the first and foremost. So what I did is about 5 years or 10 years ago, whenever you want to attend a project management class, um, the the duration of the class is actually 5 days. It's crazy. So in that 5 days, you will do a project work. Fast forward to the 2020s, these days, you will realize that 5 days no longer work. Even you look at construction projects, some construction projects maybe 10, 20, okay, even 200 years ago. How long does it take to build a castle? They'll tell you 50 years.
Mm.
Right now, if you build a housing project in 5 years, that's way too long. Everybody is looking at building project, complete a project within 1 to 2 years. And it's the same thing. If you look at my country, Singapore, how long does it take for a country to go from a small fishing village to a cosmopolitan? They would say easily 100, 150 years. But Lee Kuan Yew actually managed to do it in a single generation, in a span of 40 years, 50 years. He actually cut it down by one third. So if you look at the book, it's the same thing. You still are doing the whole thing from PMI. You still go to the process of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and of course, closing. But do you really need to do all these things uh, thoroughly? Probably not. And that's where even Agile comes in. So one of the things that my boss likes to say is you start a project, but you fail fast, you fail early. Because even if you do all the preparation work, that doesn't guarantee your success because things are so dynamic. You know, you can plan all you want, and at the end of the day, your project will still fail because you didn't encounter you did not cater for certain issues later on. So how do I actually shorten it? It's very simple. I will still do everything, but we will start by asking a few key questions. Have you actually established your project charter? Have you established the people that you want in your team? That's the part. Once you have answered those questions, yes, I have done it. I know who my team members are going to be. Then your project initiation is done. Let's move on the planning phase. During the planning phase, have you secured the budget? Do you know what you are really thinking of doing? Have you actually planned out all your work breakdown structure? Do you have buy-in from management? Do you have buy-in from the people, your parents, if you're going to college? Do you have buy-in from your parents that this is the one thing that they are willing to support you to doing? So once you have the buy-in, yes, once you have that, move. You don't have to wait, for another 2 weeks. You don't have to wait for another month. You don't have to wait for another 6 months. Once you have the checklist, then you start moving. And that's how you actually speed things up.
Absolutely. And I think what you mentioned there, actually having a charter is something quite a lot of people overlook having in the first place. And also that kickoff meeting where, to make sure that we have that foresight we can't work out every potential risk that might come up or
Mhm,
issue might crop up. But if we at least have that conversation at the start and have that in our
mhm.
mind, because like risk management, it's like a golden thread as well throughout.
Yes.
And I think a lot of organizations sometimes get really stuck, especially if they've only ever done sort of traditional waterfall methodologies,
Mm,
but then they're starting to move more into the arena of software development or product development, and they get stuck then because
yes.
you know, as with Agile, you can sort of take a step back, you can incorporate the changes, you can incorporate the feedbacks, you can do it in sprints and changing as you go and
Mhm,
continuously improving.
yes.
And particularly as more organizations are starting to work in that more lean and agile agility sort of methods. So I think we're going to see more and more of that hybrid approach kind of like coming up, which I think is probably a much better way to sort of
I think
to
so.
sort of do
I think
things
so.
for sure. And how has from your sort of perspective, how has project management sort of evolved over the past decade, and where do you see it heading?
I think the project life cycle is going to be way shorter
Mm,
compared. I mean, you see it 10, 20 years ago. 10, 20 years ago, 3 years. Um, if you think of an idea from concept all the way to it going to mass production, it takes about 2 to 3 years. Right now, I have been asked to do a project transfer in a year. Even for a product transfer, like say, for example, I'm going to be setting up a plant in Shanghai, and the VP. So I presented it to my boss. I said I can actually complete the whole thing in a year. He presented to the vice president. The VP actually said, "That's too long. Can you do it in 6 months?" Like what? So because the world is moving at such a fast pace, because the moment you hear about things going on, you are not the only one who is going to do it. You look at AI. How long does it take for ChatGPT to go into mainstream? Very
mm,
quick. But right now, Samsung has their own AI. Microsoft has their own AI. Before
yeah,
you know it, Cisco has their own AI. And then James Dyson will probably come up with his own AI stuff. Things are moving so fast that
yeah.
you can't wait 2 to 3 years. Right now, sometimes even certain management will actually tell you 6 months is way too long. Can you actually get it done in 3 months? Because if you don't, the competition is there and people will just beat you at it. You come up with a better version of it, well, they will get the market share. Yeah,
Yes, it's a
it's
difficult.
crazy.
It is.
It's
It's
a
a very
crazy world out there.
difficult world out there, definitely. But obviously, when you speed things up, that's where things get missed, and we
Correct.
then start to teeter on that. We may have had like a silver, gold sort of idea or something, and then it's minimum viable product. That's it. You're just going
Mhm.
to, yeah. And then we start to see the more sort of iterations of like, this is volume one, this is volume two, because we need to
Yes.
then make those changes because we forgot, we've missed things out in
Hmm.
order to be able to get it set up. And I think I sort of touched from I was sort of having to think about this question as well, and I touched on it already. I think one of the biggest changes is that rise of kind of agile and that hybrid approach, and
Hmm.
um, you know, with industries, like you said, evolving rapidly, they need that
Hmm.
more flexibility, and that's where that agile sort of comes in. Because it's adaptable, you've got that collaboration, and you can deliver value in smaller increments rather than wait until
Hmm.
everything is 100 complete. Um,
Correct.
but not every project obviously is going to be purely agile because many industries have very strict sort of regulations
Mm.
where long-term planning is required, quite often sort of within sort of governments and perhaps sort of charities and stuff like that as well. But that what I'm seeing more is as an employer, having both agile and traditional methods is a must-have skill
Hmm.
because they're not. I'm finding organizations now not asking, should we use either Agile or should we use Prince 2 PMP, for example? No, they want to see how they can blend the two together.
Hmm.
Does your book does it sort of go into any sort of project management trends at all?
No, it doesn't. But if you come to think of it, I think the main crux of the matter, so the book is slightly above, it's only a few hundred pages. According to Kobo, you can actually complete the book in a matter of below 2 hours if you really take a look at it. So read it, and the most important thing that I actually emphasize is speed. And you talk about any methodology, whether it's agile or hybrid, bosses don't care what method you use. They just said, I want to get the job
Want
done.
it done? Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
you can get it done in half the time. Woohoo! I would love you, man. That's what they want. So, and the thing is, we still want to go through whatever things, the entire framework. We still want to go through all these processes. We cannot miss them out because if you miss them out, what happens is that you will realize that, oops, down the road, that you have missed it out and you actually have to do it from scratch. Like, for
Mm.
example, if you forgot about budgeting, you forgot about your work breakdown structure, if you didn't really complete what you want to do, and you find out later, well, you actually have to go back there. The things that you have forgotten to do, you have to redo them all over again because it is a requirement. So what my book actually says that you still have to do it, but you don't have to finish everything, So there will be a checkpoint, a checklist. For example, these are the 10 things that you need to do. If you can complete maybe three or four, then start and then iterate along the way. It's the same thing as Agile. That's what Agile is doing. You do a short sprint,
Hmm.
okay? And you ask the question, do we have enough to start? Or have we answered enough questions so that we can continue? If the answer is yes, then you move ahead because time is seriously running short. So that is where I think, and that is where what I teach the engineers as well, saying that if you want a cost reduction, the moment you actually tell your boss that you want to do a cost reduction project, or you have an idea that will actually save the company money, the boss will not say, "Oh, I'm okay with it to be done in 2 years." That's not going to fly. He said, can you get it done in 6 months? Because I really, really want to see my costs slashed by half in 6 months. And that's where you start asking questions. And that's where once you start doing the project and then you start to realize, I can actually do it, you know.
I think quite often as well, of what you're saying, particularly when it's a cost reduction and we're in the middle of the year, they want to see that within that financial
Yes,
year.
absolutely.
I'm not sure what the financial year is in Singapore. Here it's sort of April to March. And if you're in September going, I think we could do some cost reductions for next year, like, no, we want it now. We want it
It
now before
varies.
March, please.
It
Yes.
varies from company to company, depending on which company you join. They have all different fiscal years. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
It is. And what advice would you give to somebody who is a noob? They're just completely new to this world of project management and just starting out.
I think that's where I think the book comes in. If you want to start out, take a general overview. Find the easiest book that you can find, finish it in a day, and then start and learn along the way. like what my boss likes to say, fail fast, fail early, but you get the project, get the framework done. And I realize, and that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. Um, don't have to read a 500 page. I mean, if you look at the PMI book, it's 700 pages. Who has time for a
Very
700
long.
page book? So get a small little book, read it, and then once you have the gist of it, then ask the right questions. Ask all these small little questions. And then once you have the questions answered, start the project because it will take time. If you think too much about it, then likely that you won't even start because you tend to be fearful of this, you tend to fearful of that. It's I think in engineering they call this thing called analysis paralysis. You
Yes,
know, the
yes.
more you think about it, the more you don't want to do because you're so fearful of what is ahead. So and so when I teach my class, that's and one of the things I actually tell the folks is like you actually have to start a project and you start with the simplest project. For example, you're planning for a tour. If you're planning for a trip, let's say to China, you have never been there before, no one has ever done it before. Why don't you just try it? Try a small little place rather than do a big project. Try a small little project to see how it works, because you want to get your feet wet. And once you are ready, you think you're ready, then go for a bigger one and a bigger one and bigger one. And that's what all of us start. All engineers start that way. You start off with a small little project, and then once you have built up enough confidence, you go for a big one. Baby steps.
Absolutely. And it's just getting that experience and failure, at the end of the day, what I could try to get across as well to students that I sort of teach and coach as well is if a project fails, like you said earlier on, between 60-70% of most projects do fail. It's not a personal failure.
Correct.
It's don't take that as a personal, you've done something wrong, that's why it's failed. It's you're working as a collective. There's a number of reasons why that could have happened,
Mhm.
and we learn from it. So when a project does fail, that's why lessons learned are so important because we can go back, have a look through, do that post-mortem sort of analysis and sort of see, well, what could we have done better? What were some of the triggers so we can then implement that, and if we do something similar, we can hopefully avoid that in future. Um, where can our listeners get in contact with you, Wei, if they sort of had any further questions, or where could they find your book too?
Okay, so my book is available in Amazon. It's also available in Barnes and Noble, and a few other places. I'm in the midst of setting up a web page to be able to sell and to be able to have readers or whoever to be able to get access to the book. And I also have a Facebook page under Simple Project Management for Noobs to Pros. So, and I will constantly add posts. One of the most recent posts that I had was actually on a Korean drama, which is trending on Netflix. So it's a Korean drama called Ita Ewon Class, and it's a very, very interesting. In fact, the entire series, it's about how a guy who start off um, as a dropout from high school, he actually went through several episodes in his life in which, and then he finally set up a company and brought
Mm,
it public. So and the entire drama series actually implements everything on project management. It fits very, very nicely. So I actually introduced that in my Facebook post saying that, okay, you watch this Korean drama, it's available in Netflix. You read it, and then you see how the person implements all the key process groups. For example, how he initiates, how he plans, how he executes his plan, how he actually monitor and control, and finally how he actually closes out all his. And it's wonderful. So I actually put that in my Facebook post.
No, that's really great. I do similar sort of things with risk. If you can use real life sort of examples, it's more engaging, isn't it? And people can
That's
sort
it.
of like go, "Oh, I get it."
Hmm.
If I'm really stuck in understanding the product life cycle, for example, but if you can take something tangible that most people are talking about or they see and take it out of that environment from a work perspective into like a daily life, it sticks with you. That people
Yes.
reading that will be in their brain. They will
Yes.
remember. So, yeah, I love that. That's great.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Wei, for being on today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. And we'll have to get you on another time as well, and we can talk a bit more about project management and particularly from an agile perspective.
Hmm. Thank you. My pleasure.